Hello and howdy. To another episode of Verse Talks. Jay, I'm afraid, is not with us today. I don't know if he had a game, but I think he's on a flight. But in his place, welcome Holly. Holly from the Verse team, who I'm sure a lot of people hopefully will be familiar with. Holly is fantastic and has a very good sense of what's happening in the space. So yeah, Holly, thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me, guys. Thanks for letting me impose.
How's it going?
My first real pod episode. I've never been on one of these before.
Are you nervous?
I'm more curious. Yeah, I think I'll probably be quite unfiltered because I'm a last minute addition. So
let rip.
No pre-prep here.
Cool. Well, this is the marketing team meeting, so we're should come naturally. Well, good to see everyone. Should we start by discussing William's show that opened last night? Congrats, Leyla. Congrats, Anna, and everyone else who put in so much work to bring it all together. And thank you, of course, William. From the sidelines, Holly, did you see the talk? Did you get a sense of how did it look like from afar? Holly is living in Dubai at the moment, everyone, FYI.
So yeah, I think with exhibitions, everyone's always very in the moment, and it kind of drives me crazy when I'm not there and I'm watching from afar, because I'm like refreshing, like waiting for updates, waiting for the posts to come through, etc. And today it was nice seeing all of that, and later last night. But yeah, I was just kind of like, that there are so many people in the same room, like seeing this amazing work, having all those conversations. It's so hard, like being on the kind of the outside waiting for it. But I can't wait to listen to the panel discussion. I haven't seen that yet. I have no doubt that it was wonderful. But yeah, it looked beautiful. I'm also really envious because that was obviously our first show with plotters, and seeing William's work happen live must have been really special. I mean, the first show was amazing even without that. So yeah, I'm excited to see the rest of the content come through. It was definitely hard being away from London yesterday.
It was really lovely. I don't know, Ivan, did you pick up anything from afar?
From the exhibition itself? I mean, I had saw Alexandra Art's post, and I really love that, seeing William smiling and like seeing like the paint dollops, and having that kind of like aspect in general to the exhibition, I think is really interesting, right? Because it breaches that form and kind of intent where it feels like it's in a sketchbook, right? It has this tangible aspect, and like going into an exhibition and feeling that, even though we know the series itself is generative, right, and code based, I think adds a lot of personality and a lot of just like authentic realness to the entire experience. So that was really awesome to see from my end.
I think it was really beautiful how like holistic it was, having all the different elements, because I think the more that you speak to William, the more you realize he really only cares about one thing, and that's like his sole like unified identity as an artist coming through in all the different forms. And I think that was achieved really nicely, it seems, by the exhibition.
Yeah, I think so too. I think it was nice incorporating all this different aspects. So having the paintings and the prints and the sketches, and also we had some projections of like live generating of the code, because that's just as important. So I do think it was quite holistic. It's funny what you said about the plotter, Ivan. I think you're right. I think there's something about seeing a plotter at work that makes you suddenly realize he's working with a machine. Like when we talk about he's collaborating with a machine, but somehow, seeing it in this like three-dimensional aspect, it just kind of comes together. Yeah, yes, that's right. He does collaborate with a machine. And it gives it for sure a lot of life. It definitely was a highlight, I think, for a lot of people. And many people who didn't know at all about generative art found that really fascinating. Like, I think we're all familiar, obviously, with plotters, but most people outside our space are not that familiar that how diverse a plotter can be, and that you can bring in paint or pen, or which all seems like common sense, but it's just not. It's very specific. So it was nice to share that with a larger audience.
It was cool talking to him about it as well. I was speaking with him this morning and I posted some on Twitter. I asked him if we could just film it at the same time. And after about 20 minutes of chatting to him, it was like, I kind of felt, so the whole point of this, like the reason everything's together is because he's actually trying to just like melt and blend everything all into one. He doesn't really want there to be a difference between like,
No.
He was saying he's trying to get the plotter to paint as he paints. He's trying to paint as the computer paints, vice versa. And he's trying to kind of like, just bridge that
well, that's
gap
why in the
between...
exhibition that's why we mixed everything up, because and actually you wouldn't know what's printed sometimes. Like my friend he's like, wait, is this plotted or printed now? Like you actually had to look very hard to know what's different, because stylistically and compositionally they're exactly the same. Sometimes by the texture of the paint you can tell some of the plotters are very similar to the sketchbook B, to the Etude and sketchbook, but because they're built up in paint, it looks different.
Interesting feedback from a collector when having a beer outside, who was saying that, like, guys, it's a new space. Like, you're supposed to be pushing things forwards, and this is boring. There's a talk in there on at the moment, like, and you're talking about boring stuff. Like, get away from the high end stuff. Like, on real talk. Talking about feelings, talking about struggles. I don't know. But I thought that was interesting and good feedback. I don't know, like, can we spice it up? Can we make it more engaging? Not spicier, but just, I don't know, I feel like proper debates and conversations are easier to listen to than,
Well, I think it's really, really good feedback, and I think we definitely need to. It's sometimes so hard because I think in our space, we're actually kind of on the surface very often because we don't have exhibitions and we often just tweet and it's one-liners. And I think we often just sort of skim the surface, love it, hate it, this is rubbish, this is good, whatever. And when you have a moment to sit down, I think it's sort of nice to really really take your time and try to understand where the work sits in relation to other things. But this can come across boring, and maybe and maybe that's just not interesting to everybody. But do we need a little bit of both? I think we probably do. And I definitely try not to make it very serious, but maybe it's just the format of these things that we need to change up. I don't know, Holly, if you have any thoughts on that, but how can you make it more dynamic?
I think there are two different things. There's making the conversation more fun and more interesting and like getting deeper with the conversation versus making the event. I think if you do the same format but a different kind of conversation, it might work really well. But if you try and change the whole format and make the event more like a club, then it just becomes quite gimmicky and takes away from the art.
So what should the conversation be about? Like, what do our people want to know about the artists? Should it be about their personal lives? Should it not be about their process? Like, what is meaty? What do we want to hear?
It's so hard because to a certain extent, aren't these conversations also like documentational, like looking back in the future? An artist loves to think that their work will be remembered for what it is. Like if the conversation was just asking William about his private life, would he not feel almost quite robbed from that aspect of having your work exhibited?
That is exactly,
even if that's what I'm saying, to listen to.
But we're living in this era where our personal and professional life overlaps so much, right? So I think people almost want to hear about it. But what happens is that even if you are putting your personal life into your professional life, you are going to be filtered and it's going to be somewhat constructed because you are sharing it with the public and you want to be protective over it, right? So
I actually agree with
then
Leyla
how
fully.
Genuine can you be about that, Like I can say, oh, I love my kids, I love my family, I love my husband. I mean, I can say all these things, but it's like, I'm not going to give you my real dirt.
Yeah. I also think in a format like this,
like
you're more likely to share that. But in a room full of people that are watching you, you're highly aware of what you're saying and how you're looking. It's not as intimate. You're inherently guarded to an extent.
But I mean, what you said is a good point, though. It's like these moments are times for us to understand the artist more deeply, right? And that's what I was saying. I don't feel like we have enough time to do that in the job that we're doing, and the social media that we use has a word count, has, time span and everything. So do we use these times then to just use it as a documentation? Or is it the time where, we get into, I don't know. They like, I agree with the collector. I think we do need to change it up, but I just don't know how you can do it without disrespecting the practice of the artist. Or maybe it doesn't need to be personal. Maybe the arguments need to be more about, topics that we're all experiencing in our space.
So a segment on not the artist.
Well, then
Maybe.
I actually think in terms of like the context of like seeing a new series or just going into like any gallery setting, it can be so random at times, right? I'm so used to galleries just like putting like a little bit of a wall tag and like you go in and you don't know too much. But I think it's like so impactful. And I know it's hard to like break that guard down, right? And talk about your history, right? Or talk about like the really personal aspects about like how life affects your art, right? But I think as a collector and as a viewer, it's so impactful hearing that, because you get that bit of connection that makes you understand like why this piece was actually made, or like you start understanding why out of, billions of people in the world, the art piece looks like that because of their unique perspective, right? And everything that has influenced that perspective, and I think especially when you go to panels and you go to openings and you go to things like that and you have a chance to like speak, maybe it doesn't need to get super personal, but there are just like certain things that I find that really change how I see the art actually. Like it's not like I see the art the same way after I hear those things. Like I have a totally different outlook. And I think that's one of the most interesting things about just the kind of digital expression in general, and the ease of being able to connect with each other and learn these kind of things if we're willing, right? Is that you can have a different perspective right after it. It's not going to look the same to you. Like there are always moments to have a different understanding of a piece because of that world building basically to it, um
And just getting to know the artist.
yeah, 1000%. And I think that's like, to me, what makes me the closest, I think, to the art out of everything, quite honestly, is like hearing those little stories. And sometimes it's like 2 sentences, but then I see the piece, or I see the series, or I see the intent behind a system that it's like trying to reflect something that they're really saying, and then it really like hits me, and then I understand why it really means something important, right? And why it's taking up space, why it's being put into space, right? Is because like there was a reason behind it, as opposed to just seeing something and not knowing and just trying to appreciate it just for its aesthetic value.
And then the artwork becomes a connection to the artist in a way that it might otherwise not be, to such an extent.
Entirely, the whole way through. Yeah. It feels theirs as well then, because there's a lot of pieces, and this goes for, I think, conceptual art a lot. There's a lot of pieces that may at times look visually similar, to a lot of motifs in the world, but it's like the concept around why it was made, or the intent around that was made, that is what holds it down, right? So being able to understand why an artist has that perspective in the first place, right, is what makes you look through past the aesthetic, right, past that form of connection, and really find the value in why would someone make something that looks like this in the first place. And I think that just as a viewer and collector, playing that mind game and trying to get into that headspace really is interesting, and it's kind of like a fun challenge sometimes with conceptual art, right? Because there's a lot of pieces that may look the same, but being able to learn those slight little differences and how it was presented, and for what reason in the commentary, like they can actually make you connect with things that you might normally not, or you might seem are mundane, but I think that's that's like an important part of art in general, is like actually thinking about the mundane things and having something to say about them in the first place. Like every kid has a sketchbook, but it's not like every kid is thinking when they grow up, I'm going to be an artist. It's just their way to get things out there, and that's what I really love about the project, with
Well,
William.
I feel William's sketchbook outputs are both good-looking visual things, but also embodiments of William's expression and personality, if that makes any sense at all. Does that make any sense at all?
Yeah, absolutely. But you're absolutely right. And I think what I really love about this is that sketchbook is a lifetime commitment. So it is very much about him. It's not going to end with A, and it's not going to end with B, and it's going to go on for a long time beyond Z. He said, if it goes beyond Z and I keep going, I'll add numbers.
Yeah. Sorry, I just put my hand up because when you said no, that's another thing that we should have put on the agenda and didn't. The fact that the outputs differ depending on what browser you're looking at it in.
B stands for browser
Yeah.
talks, and also we're going past Z because
we talked about this
art is a
yesterday.
language, right? So we got it, and it's always expanding. So
Ivan, I don't think you've been part of this conversation yet. What are your thoughts on the fact that William's outputs do look different in some browsers? We've had some collectors saying, "Ugh, don't really love this." What's William's very much William could not that William couldn't care less. I think William actively quite likes it. Like he likes the feeling that the code is live. And
you're really throwing me into the fire with this question because this
be
is
honest,
like something.
We'll cuss it if you go too far.
This is just like in my wheelhouse entirely. So, as someone that's collected a lot of generative art, I always like going into live mode, and I do like going on different devices. And I like going into different browsers as well. And part of that exploration for me is a little hacky in a sense, like I'll give an example with device one made by Andreas Geisen, I was doing like a lot of things with like zooming in and out of the piece that really like could change how it reacted in different browsers, and that wasn't intentionally part of the piece. It was just me like trying to interact with it, and I think that.
So it worked different. So it worked differently in different browsers.
Yeah, it worked differently, and it wasn't intentional, but it's part of the construct of the code, the way it was built, right? That entire system that's being built, the reason that it acts that way, if I do certain things, is because it's built like that, right? And it's like when you see a house, that's what you see. It's built up brick by brick. When you go inside of it, it looks that way because it was made that way, right? And for me as a viewer, that's part of a lot of the fun. Now, I know in a traditional aspect, it's supposed to be like, look at this piece and understand it and enjoy it, but for me, it's a little bit different because I'm on my computer all day. I have that hand to mouse to screen motion to really get into the world, right? So, and this is something I also experienced with Patak's Drift, series, that it had looked differently in thumbnails because of live mode rendering and in different browsers, and it's something that I think is, in my opinion, really dependent on the artist's intent. It's always based on the artist's intent, because there's a couple series that I can recollect where there was a lot of focus on, does it look the same throughout all browsers, and at times even that alone can lead to constraints, having to do certain things to work around the fact that it does look different in browsers. So I think that that's one thing, but I think it's also based on the artist's intent. If they want it to be a living and breathing thing where you see your piece and it kind of like grows or looks a little bit different, like you're going, every single day you go to the gallery is going to be different. you're not going to wake up. You're not going to see like the same clouds when you wake up. It's the same. And with that same mentality for a work of art, I think gives it a little bit of a breath. It doesn't necessarily give it like brimming life, but I think it gives it like a breath. And I think that little silent moment that you get from it being slightly different is powerful. Now, my biggest downside with this is based on the distribution aspect of things, right? So with randomized mints, when they were, getting really huge, people got used to it, right? Because it was really exciting. But after a year or two, they started being like, I kind of want to pick and see, I kind of don't want to gamble, and that's what happens with different models, right? Your collector base matures, the hype wears off, right? When everyone's just trying to wrap their heads around how it feels to experience art that way, right? And I think that for collector curated inherently, that there's a strong ethos, I think, that when you are iterating something and you're seeing what you're getting and you're choosing, I want to mint that because it's exactly what I'm seeing, based on how it's presented and everything. I think there's a validity to believing that that's going to be exactly what you're going to get, but does that override the artist's intent? No, I don't think anything really inherently overrides the artist's intent. And I think Etudes is an incredible collector curated series, and it's incredible because it was crafted by William. Every single step along the way, it's crafted by William. And he's always putting his entire passion and focus into an authentic experience that really, relays how he's feeling and what he wants to say. And if this is part of it, then I'm entirely on board, but with, a few things on my mind on the back end of how it can be perceived, obviously.
I think even with the collector curated element of it, like in William's mind, if you have the thumbnail and then you have the live rendering in one browser and you have the live rendering in another browser, like all of those different elements are still that one work. They're not different works, they're just different views of the same work. And you can still curate that, right? Like anyone who buys a William work that's collector curated, they'll see the thumbnail a million times before they select that seed. They'll see the live rendering a million times. They'll go back and forth. They'll be completely familiar with all those different elements. Maybe not between browsers if they're unaware, but I still would be surprised if somebody's like caught out at the end of it. And I think
I was actually caught out last time, to be fair.
Yours was massively different. I mean,
with your-
Sketchbook
but
A was
your-
wild. It was wild. But I also
Fair enough.
don't understand.
Fair enough.
To me, this is interesting because I think, Ivan, you made a really good point. The idea that is collector curated is the thing that throws, a twist into it. Because if you think about it, the code is live and it really reflects on the nature of the browser and that it behaves differently on different browsers. I mean, that is very much the context that it's born in. And as an artist, he wants to keep that purity. I mean, it sounds kind of, so I think I can completely see why he would want to do that. Also, if you think about it, it's in a way like a painter, creating a painting, they can't control the lighting of it. You can put it in a dark space. Like once your work is out, the code is done, the work is out. So does it matter? You're saying I'm pushing it, Jamie. You're twitching.
That feels like a stretch.
Well, I mean,
but is it that? I guess what I'm saying.
Though.
But I'm saying you don't have control as an artist. I guess this is what I'm saying. Our counter argument is the code not accomplished enough, so it doesn't happen? What is the problem?
I have a devil's advocate. There's either like two solutions. One, I don't think there really is a solution for, is that when Verse is showing anything on Firefox, something on the front end or back end allows it so when you see a preview, it's going to be somehow the same every single time. Now, I don't know like how that would work. Another thing that in general could happen is that when you iterate a piece, maybe there's something on our end that could be done where at least inherently on the browser, it's going to always look the same as the preview, right? So, and this is something that, I'm not aware. Is this a problem on Sketchbook or on Etudes, right? Is the preview different than the final piece?
It depends what browser you're using.
So it
It
depends what
doesn't
browser
differ as
that you're
much as
using.
Sketchbook A did,
Okay.
but it does differ a bit.
So in that particular scenario, if there's a differing from the generate iterate mode into going into live mode, maybe there's something that we could do on our end at Verse, to make sure that links up, and in terms of structuring, because
But that's not what he wants as an artist. He had the option to quote unquote fix the algorithm, and he chose not to because he didn't see it as a bug to be fixed.
well,
It's
if he
part
does,
of the work in his
if it's
mind.
not a bug, then yeah, totally. Like run it up entirely. I just personally believe that if it's part of the intent and there is a cohesive purpose around it, it feels
Does there
authentic.
need to be? Does there need to be a purpose? Does
I
there need?
think-
Does that like?
I think in general, like, since we're a platform, there does need to be a general like explanation of why, because most people are going to obviously assume for collector curated as
But
they
this
his work
standard,
has always done that.
but this new quote unquote standard is completely arbitrary. Like you don't need to.
Yes,
you don't need to just
his work may have always done that, but if you're a new
Yes.
collector on Verse, you may not be expecting that whatsoever. So it
Well,
does need
then
to be
you need to know
explained.
more
So that's
about the
one.
artist.
Well, yes, but we also, but isn't it also on us to explain that and make it well known
Yes.
and have a
So Ivan,
Yes,
you're saying
100%.
so Ivan, are you saying that even though this new standard is like arbitrary and like not actually a real thing, we still need to kind of justify any deviation from it because it's not what people expect?
I think that since it's so often paired exactly to what you're seeing from the preview mode to live mode, I think that sets a certain like standard
Right.
inherently. It sets a certain kind of conditioning to whether it be new collectors to Verse that have bought one piece and they're looking towards the next collector curated, or old collectors on Verse that are typically used to it not deviating, right? And I think that having that be known out there is just in general good. It's just good to have that information, right? It's good business practices to let collectors be known, and it also adds something to the story, especially if it's intentional. And William is it's done intentionally by William, and we should be able to speak about it and have it add to the story, and have it also be like, there's a chance for us to say like, look, a lot of collector curateds do look like the preview. There's an inherent feeling that it should be tied, but William's playing with that, and why. And I think that adds a lot personally. And I think that is kind of what makes it look and feel a lot more as what it is, right? It's not just random, like the code wasn't taken to the point where it looks the same. Like there's an intent behind it.
I agree with Ivan. I think it's definitely our responsibility to communicate the artist's intent. And clearly we haven't done that.
Well,
So
I think he's specified preferred browser Chrome. In the future, are we going to need to state what version of Chrome as of
Well, that was the other
2025?
argument, because he said everything is going to keep changing over the next, it's never going to look the same.
So I think it would be fun to do a poll, because he's been talking about kind of jokingly, kind of seriously doing Sketchbook C
he definitely
being a
wants to do it.
version where he just breaks it
Oh,
all
yeah,
together and they look wildly
He
different.
said he will. Not C,
So
D.
I think okay, D. So I think we do a poll and we say, okay, do you still want that to be collector curated or not? And I bet you people will say yes. They'll still want to curate their seeds, even if they know they'll be widely different, because you can still see in what way they're different. You can still see, well, I imagine somewhat, you'll be able to see the composition or the colors.
There's also that element of
I think
surprise,
people will
right?
still choose that option.
When we pulled up Jamie's Sketchbook A, we're like, oh, what does it look like? What does it look like in the other browser?
Ivan, did you see this? Jamie's sketchbook is like fluorescent blue in Safari. Completely different. Jamie had no idea. It's like fluorescent turquoise. But would you change your seed?
Not if I knew that I could kind of get what I thought was like the actual version back at some point. If I knew that in 20 years' time, I'd be able to like retrieve the quote unquote real version,
Yeah.
then sure.
Okay, but how? Okay, here's a question: how would you retrieve the original version?
I would
if it's-
say to the AI of the day, please, can you spin me up the Google Chrome from 2023 so I can run this?
He's thought this through. You
Jamie,
know?
your optimism. Jamie, I love how you're just like, yeah, there's gonna be something that can just do this for me. Like I
It's gonna
love
save
that
the world.
enthusiasm. Yeah. I think that actually has me really excited because it adds this whole other
You went
story,
from
right?
like,
Sketchbook-
oh, I don't know, to I'm really excited. That's good.
Well, I think because now it breaches into like a conceptual territory.
Yeah.
You know, like knowing that William intends it, knowing like it's been part of his practice for a very long time now, right? And then knowing that he wants to lead up this like huge, kind of focus on these differences, these browser differences, and then make an actual series, set that inherently digs into it the full way, I think is great. Like that is like the highlight of Web3 is like, being able to listen to like the climate around you and how everyone feels about certain things and being able to have a commentary and react to it and do something that is like in front of its face, and I think that is always going to be exciting. That's always going to be a part of something.
I love
in
how
Web3
unaffected
that,
William
pulls
has
in.
been by this entire thing. That is so great.
Well, this is the thing, though. I think his whole work, his whole practice,
could not care
including
less.
sketchbook A, B, or Etude, all of his work is about being really authentic and knowing his own identity. And I think he sees this, whether it was something that happened by mistake or whether this was something that's intentional, is almost irrelevant. But he sees this as part of himself. So why then give in to people who don't
And
agree
so
with
much
it?
confidence in saying like, doesn't affect me at all if people are complaining about this. Like, no.
Yeah,
Fair play.
that's what makes him great.
We don't have that long. Shall we move to the other IRL opening last night that we missed? That was Marina Abramovich's upcoming release with TIEX. If anyone
At one
else
point,
wants
William
to,
and I
wants to kick it off.
thought,
Okay.
at one point, William and I thought maybe we can Uber it there very quickly in between the opening, our opening
should've
and our
tried.
dinner. But I think we're a bit too optimistic because I think we were both curious. One of the collectors was there. She said it was really well presented, and I would think it is because TIEX have a healthy budget. And so does Mocha, and they take their presentations very seriously.
Well, can we talk about the fact that, Leyla, that you were wondering if you'd be able to get one, and from there, your no wallet stance.
Yes, a big statement coming out.
Putting your foot down.
I'm going to try not to have a wallet. I want to keep all my NFTs
See
in
if
my
you can
Verse.
see if you can survive.
Verse. Well, because now we have secondary going, so I could technically get any artist on Verse,
On Ethereum.
and I'm on Ethereum. Yes, I not with Tezos. That well soon, hopefully at some point. And I'm just so frustrated with the way you have to collect and the wallet and everything. We talked about it today with two other colleagues in the gallery, and they both felt equally frustrated by it. So I don't know really what we do about it, but I think I'm going to try to go without it. Holly, how do you feel about it? Because you're much more integrated than me.
It's one of those things where I picture, if for whatever crazy reason that would obviously never happen, I ended up not at Verse, it would drive me insane to not have the functionality that Verse has. Like I have other wallets and I use them. But
Me too, and I lose
using
the password
so much.
I don't know where my seed freight is. It drives me crazy.
It takes so much time. Like even if you know exactly where it is, it might be like written on a piece of paper, folded up 10 times in a book, in a safe. Like, do you know what I mean? Instead of
always think I'm going to out clever myself.
Yeah, it's the risk. It's somewhere too safe.
I mean, I always put
you
it in
either have no
like,
security or you have way too much. Like we've got Alexi, and I'm happy with that.
Yeah.
I literally remember like hiding a seed phrase like 3 months ago, and I'm trying to recall where I put it right now, and I can't. Like that's literally what I'm saying. Like I can't. It's so annoying. I would much rather not have to ever rely on that, because I've already lost one wallet before. Because I just couldn't find any of the hiding spaces, because it's just like, and every time I looked, it'd be not there. So it's like I clearly went and like shuffled it around somewhere. So it's just like such a hassle, and I have such bad experiences with that I'm more trusting of other people than myself when it comes to my wallet. Like, and I don't think this is like not a common thing too.
On that note,
you hear about so many hacks, and you hear about so many people that are just like, it's clunky trusting yourself, sometimes, especially with something like this, because going back and being like, I've lost my password and getting an email is just like the most relieving, euphoric feeling ever, comparatively to like losing your seed phrase forever. It's just the worst.
Speaking of which, I also just saw a Sophia Crespo post on Twitter as we were starting this, and I suddenly felt a pang of sadness that my Entangled Others piece, that's maybe one of my favorite artworks I've ever bought on Verse, was in a wallet that I lost the bloody seed phrase to, and it's just gone. It's so annoying.
So you share the frustration same as I do, Jamie.
Oh, like, massively. It's so annoying.
When you lose pieces that way, it's the biggest, like,
hate it.
And it's so, you never see it coming either. It's like one day you're like, I want to go into my wallet. And then you're like, wait, I can't go into my wallet. I don't have the information. And it's like, you suddenly realize you did it to yourself too. Like your whole stomach just drops immediately.
Yeah, that's rubbish. I mean, Leyla, I love how you're saying, I'm going to see if I can do it, when like, as if you might not be able to.
Because I'm so addicted to my wallet. No, actually, it was okay. Everybody, it's been hard coming out publicly with this because obviously this is our industry. But I feel confident now that with Verse Secondary, I can do this. I can do this. Unashamed. I can be public about it. I can be myself.
Well, yeah. Yeah.
It's true, though. I swear it's true. I'm not plugging. I really mean it. I find it really hard, but yeah, maybe I'm exceptionally.
I think the space filters for technically. I think the space filters for people who are good at this kind of thing. Like literally, no one who's unable to use a wallet is in crypto. So, well, I suppose other than you.
Wow, that's digging.
No, I mean, like,
it's to the core.
So I have had.
And how'd you get here?
What loser.
I saw James laughing in the background and like total stony silence from everyone else.
Who employed you?
Yeah,
I always said I'm not good with these things, so that was like I was always very honest about it.
Yeah, can we segue to this SuperRare Jack? I don't know how you pronounce his surname. Kaido. I'm not sure if everyone saw this. I'm reading his tweet here. The funniest thing to happen in my career yet. SuperRare asked me to pull this piece from their show and make another one. Told me it wasn't suitable for the trad art gallery crowd who would be there. I chose not to. They apologized, said it was going in, then pulled it anyway. And the piece has some painting in the background, or looks like painting in the background with text over it saying, you could have owned this, but you blew it all on shitcoins. And obviously, SuperRare got a load of hate for this. I think it's a reasonable call on their part. I think they were probably put in a difficult position. Definitely an interesting debate. Any thoughts?
I think it's always interesting to see things like this, like going like publicly in general. I try to believe like platforms here, as the few that are left, are going into things with the best intentions and trying to do the best to make like a very cohesive show, and they have to keep that in mind, you know. And I think in general, like it just generally got messy. I think communications are hard sometimes in DMs in general, and especially when things are like in a rush, and trying to put together a physical exhibition, working with digital pieces and things like that. And at the same time, I like SuperRare's response right in the end, and I like how Anne had handled it as well.
What did they say in the end? Sorry,
the work still ended up in the exhibition. They were presented.
they got bullied.
I don't think that they got bullied per se, but I think that, having that kind of information out there about how a presentation just ended up not working out it's a high pressure situation for any gallery, right? It's something that feels wrong, even though you're going and you're stepping into things with the best intentions, right? And I think that this decision was really smart in general, and especially in Web3, because it's really community based. And Jack has
smart to put it back in. Jump in.
I think in general, like, it's very community based in Web3, and like SuperRare is a place that is very tapped into a Web3 community, and if the artists inherently are showing a lot of discontent because of the practices, it just sends a pretty bad message in part for that.
But I don't know everything about this situation, but I don't think this was super like community-based move, or that they got bullied, because her response, it wasn't like, mistake, it's in the show, many apologies. It was like a he said, she said situation. This is the real reason this happened. This is the real reason why we did this. And it all aired publicly. I don't know, that makes me feel really uncomfortable. That should never be public, I don't think. And it kind of also means that them putting it back in the show, it completely undermines putting it back in the show. Like, again, Star Will, it's back in the show,
Yeah.
I don't think that was handled correctly at all.
Thoughts on the decision to pull it in the first place, thinking...
What is this exhibition? Guessing... I'm sorry, I'm totally lost.
What's this exhibition?
Their inaugural
yes, their physical show
of their physical place.
But I'm sorry, but is... Yeah,
I mean, I presume SuperRare... So SuperRare see a piece saying something about blowing a load of money on shitcoins, presumably thought, well, this is going to resonate with 1,000th of the population of New York City, and it's going to make the space look like DJ. It's going to make the whole thing look degenerate. So let's take it out.
They are a gallery that's not traditional.
But they did agree on the piece in the first place. So Jamie, I think doing
I know, but just diving into the decision to remove it. What are your thoughts on that in isolation?
Well, in isolation, I think we need to look at the context. They said that the formatting was wrong. That they're saying
that's an excuse.
I know. And then they're saying there was no response back from the artist. The formatting does not fit that screen. It will cut the piece, and then the artist had not sent, the right formatting for it to look properly spaced, right? And then they decided, well, okay, if there's no communication happening, then we need to pull it because we can't show something that's
but all of this is an excuse. Like, the reality is they wanted to take it out because they thought that they would be judged by people who aren't from crypto. Thoughts on that?
But nobody who's not from crypto would go and see that.
But they're presumably opening the gallery, Leyla, to reach other people, and they don't want to alienate those other people they're trying to reach.
But why curate that piece in the first place then?
Exactly, you're bringing in a type of artist.
Well, that's just unprofessional in general. Like that's first basis is like, go to an artist, they send you work, you have the ability to say yes or no. There's approval process. It's their first physical show. Like, it's a big deal.
Like, this happens all the time, by the way. I mean, I don't know why it sounds so controversial. All the time, galleries make decisions, and we do it. I'm sorry, but we've had situations with artists where we say,
well, you literally said afterwards, how on earth has this not happened to us 20 times?
Yeah. I said that. I said this is it's very common, because you're putting a show together and sometimes the work just doesn't work. Now, for whatever the reasons are, I don't really know. I'm not into the depth of the discussion, but it happens a lot. But I think what really happened is that there was not a good communication between artist and organizer, as Holly was saying. And as a result, it got into the public realm. And it's a shame, because that's the kind of thing, unfortunately, that doesn't build a reputation for our space. Like there should be a much better, like if we are building, if you're building a traditional gallery and you want to make this a thing, then you really build a good relationship with your artists. And it's a shame that didn't happen for artists or gallerists. I mean, it's probably always takes two to tango, so it can't be one or the other.
I think the biggest mistake was
happen.
just responding publicly. I think if they hadn't responded publicly and they had just contacted him directly, they either could have resolved it and he took his post down, or it would have blown over. But would we really be discussing it if it hadn't have become a public argument?
I don't know. It's a very public space though, isn't it? And people...
But it also things move quickly. I think it like adds fuel to the fire to be responding publicly and defending yourself publicly.
But maybe they felt like they had to. I don't know. I agree with you. I think that would have been the more political way of handling it for sure.
I still believe that, yes, this does happen really often in any gallery or platform setting. Like things are moving fast, things are changing, schedules are changing, current programming changes like so often, but I still think that in the end, even though it is common, that it kind of always leans on the platform side or the gallery side, right? Like it in the end of the day, if you agree on a series, like that is the moment that you can either say yes or no and try to look into the future and see, does this fit our program? Is this going to be good in a week, 1 month, 2 months? Is this something that we envision as something part of the long-term history of SuperRare?
I had a situation with a very big company. Maybe I shouldn't name names. Should I?
Yes.
Just name the
Soho
names.
House. There you go.
Okay,
massive
that's fine.
commission. Massive commission with a really big artist.
Oh, this
really
was for
big
Art
artist.
Basel. I remember this.
Big artist from Miami. And they pulled out on the artist 10 days before installation. The artist incurred massive amount of production costs. The artist has a huge social media following. I said, why don't you make a public statement and take these people down? I was so upset about how they handled it. Yeah. And they said, we won't do it. That's not the way we work. So it's also, it depends on how an artist behaves. They for them, if they felt like, yeah, this is horrible, but we want to keep an image up. We don't want to take things into the public realm. They're disputing it in their own ways, on their sidelines. So people handle things differently. It's not just the platform. It's also the artist decided to go very public on that.
It is interesting, though, because at the end, Anne did say, the piece is now going to be seen, and because of this whole situation, going to be seen by such a much wider amount of people now within the space, and generally, even more because of all the shares. It's gotten quite viral, I would say, in Web3 right now. So in a way, I think the intended purpose is there. Like like the whole noise about shit coins, and the whole hype about it, and the whole boom and bust is kind of akin to like, Jack thinking the piece is going to be into the exhibition, and it's not, then it just, then it crashes, and being able to reflect that, I think, in real time, and then have SuperRare just immediately be like, it's not done yet, and revive the piece back into the gallery. Like there's something really crypto about the whole situation,
Yeah. Well, we have a spaces now with Petra, so we're going to have to run. Sorry.
Holly, can you jump back in or do you need to stay on the spaces?
Maybe I can start it on my phone and then jump back in.
Cool.
Sure. Don't you worry, I got you. Groovy. Okay, see you guys in a sec. Bye.
See you in a sec.
Well, let's get back into this verse talks.
Just before we begin, I placed a bid on Elna. I'm
going. Ooh, nice.
Oh my gosh, do you really like the Jaws piece?
I really love it.
I really like that it's like the screen can't contain the like Jaws coming out. It gives you that old school like, wow, 3D glasses at the theater vibe. Like
I also love the motion of the jaw itself when you look at it and how it's almost like skeletal, like it's so sculptural. I think it's wicked.
Holly, you're growing like a pretty wild collection. Can you dive into that for us for a bit? Like, can you tell us about like your collecting ethos and like what's catching your eye right now in 2025? You've been with us like the whole year. You've seen like thousands of digital art pieces now in the last few years.
I was looking at my collection recently, and I don't think there's much of like a theme to it. I don't think
Sorry,
you
Holly, I'm
could.
pulling it up now at Holly
Sure.
Wrench.
Yeah, just at Holly Wrench. I don't have a huge amount of works, but I love all the works I do have. But I don't think there's, other than like hyper colorful, maybe like sensory overload, I don't think you could really pin like a style on it. Like I was looking at
Your ugly
Grayla's.
bitches is so good.
I know.
It's so
I love that
good.
one. I was looking at Luke from Grayla's, his profile the other day, because I was looking at tiny bird balls that he bought. And like you can, it has such a distinct aesthetic that he clearly loves collecting, you know? I don't know if you could necessarily say the same about mine, but I love all of them. And
You know,
I'm
that's
also
really
very
relatable,
influenced
Holly.
by like personal experiences. Like I think I get very pulled in if I feel like I know the artist better, or I know why they create better, and I've conversed with them. Even like with the recent Fake Whale show, when we did a Twitter space where a bunch of the artists joined and spoke through their pieces, I had already placed bids on 3 of them, but I immediately went in and like checked that they were still there and topped them up after having those discussions.
Those experiences really like push the feeling of like you're supporting, like, you know,
Yeah.
an honest expression, you know, to like you're supporting like art in general and like someone else, you know, and it doesn't feel like, oh, I'm just buying an art piece for myself. Like it feels like such a more well-rounded experience.
Yeah.
And I relate so hard. Like I love the colorful stuff, you know. That's why I really like Eric Swan's art, and I love scrolling down my collection because it's just like I feel like I'm walking into the best day ever when I see his work, and it's like rainbows, you know, like all of it together becomes like a rainbow, and it's amazing.
Yeah.
Broken Printer #1. There it is. I love it.
I know you want it.
Oh, that's a good one.
I think my favorite piece in my collection is the Marcel Schwittlick composition 92.
Marcel's work is phenomenal.
Yeah, it's I mean, it's
nice.
such a like elegant piece, but also that again has such an emotional attachment, because when we were doing Paris Photo, every time I tour someone around the booth, the thing that like got me speaking the most and got me most excited was Marcel's work and like explaining the plotted luminograms to them. And so that's also such a memory piece, and sat there like hoping that I could mint it with Mimi. It was great. Yeah. But my table is not my only #1. I've also got that Andreas Rau #1.
Oh, that's #1.
Yeah.
I'm
quick
nice.
to click.
I have Carbon Capture #1, but unfortunately it's in a
Crazy.
wallet.
That was in your
I
lost
do
wallet.
not-
Yeah.
It's in my wallet. It's in my lost wallet now. Yeah. Here's a philosophical question: can a garden grow if you lost the keys to the wallet where the garden's growing?
I mean, you can keep adding to it, but it
just keep sending to it and just never have access. So at that point, it's like it really is like a service to the world. It can't be burned.
Kind of is burning it.
Yeah, you're right. Because could you still go back to the burn wallet and see everything that's ever been sent there?
I guess so.
I think you can.
I'm sure there's a couple like Web3 pieces that play on this like commentary and theme. I actually kind of want to look into that. Like, has anyone made like a collage type thing of all the burned crypto just stuff thrown into the burn address on Ethereum?
Yeah, I think you definitely can, because with Tabor's ones where you had to burn to recycle, I think you can still find all of those works. They're just not, they're not accessible. The collectors don't own them anymore. No one ever can, but they still exist.
Well, just to get back to the agenda, Ivan, you were talking about toxic positivity the other day. Grace posted about toxic positivity in the space, saying, I enjoy collecting exceptional and fun on-chain art, yet the constant flow of hollow praise and mediocre work is frustrating and confusing. This empty hype dilutes the impact of compelling art and ultimately discourages serious patrons from investing in the space. Is this a problem in your eyes?
I actually think I'm part of the problem that she's describing.
I don't think that's true. Holly,
Interesting.
you share great. Anytime you share a piece, it's great. Okay. And it's done because it's like you actually like it for what it is. And it's not just like part of like the flow of the culture, you know?
Thank you. But I think, you know, with Botto's algorithmic evolution, he had the down likes, the up likes, and the super likes. I'm like an up like and a super like kind of gal. But I'm the down likes, I'm uncomfortable with that, you know? And I think if I see people sharing artwork, even if it's work that I like less than others, or even if it's work that I really don't like at all, I'll still love the fact that they're sharing it. So I'll still sometimes hype it up, even if I know like I would never collect that. Do you know what I mean? So, which means that would people be able to trust my take? I hope so, because I'm very effusive when I'm very effusive when I really love something. But I'll also, I hope so, but I don't know. I saw Grace post that, and I did immediately have a little moment of introspection.
Really?
No, it's super clear, I think, when you really like something, because the way you post about it is like you really find a connection with the piece, Holly. So, and I think that like comes through so often. I think for me, I like to really curate my feed. So I only really repost or like post pieces that I really like, I think at this point. Like I know when I was first starting in Web3 and just like jumping from like different communities and like becoming involved, I was reposting a lot of pieces that I wouldn't necessarily put on my wall, you know, or necessarily like connect with, because I just wanted to be part of everything, you know. And I found just like the conversations were interesting, and I wanted to be able to support. I think nowadays I can kind of see what Grace is saying about the hollow praise aspect of things, you know. Like it just feels like sometimes if a collector joins the space and like really collects a lot of the things that are already in the limelight and like really hypes it up, you know, it doesn't give that many new people, I would say, even more hope to expand their view, right? Like you keep seeing the same art over and over again. And I think that, you know, it's also easy once you see the same art over and over again to believe that it's mediocre after some time, you know, because it becomes like so
the other way around, isn't it?
It's still
in general, people see X copy a million times and are conditioned to thinking it's incredible,
right? And it becomes like a household thing, you know. It's the same way that you could look at an Apple logo and you're just going to be like, wow, this is like on everything in my house, like I see it every single day, you know. It's not going to be as exciting as when you're 12 getting your first MacBook Air, or you know, like it just won't, you know. And I think that's not what makes Apple mediocre. Apple's not mediocre because of that, you know. But I do think that there's this general feeling that comes with being here for so many years, that if you keep seeing the same, you know, artists and pieces shared over and over, it starts to feel a little bit stale, you know, and it starts to feel like the same things are being spoken about. And that doesn't make it really exciting, you know, to be part of a community in that sense.
Is that really true though? Is that really true?
I think so,
isn't it the case that the more people talk about Sam Spratt, the more other people want to discover their own?
As long as Sam keeps putting out work and like building out that world and everything. But this is different than video games, right? With video games, you can have an online community. There could be updates constantly, you know, and it's like competitive, like you're putting in a lot of effort inherently. So it's you doing something, your output plus the community aspect. And that's a really sticky combination, you know. But in art, it's a completely different feeling, you know. If you're just seeing the same things shared every day, and you can't really be part of the conversation every day. You can't collect something every day. You can't have something new to say about the same piece for a whole year every day, you know? So I can see how that leads to like a feeling where there's just hollow praise going around, you know, or it starts feeling like really stale. For me, it doesn't feel mediocre, you know, because I follow thousands of artists. I see so many great pieces every day, but I can totally see where Grace is coming from here.
I think maybe the thing is, if you see 1,000 of something, your instinct is to you just like pass over it quickly rather than stopping to think, which ones you actually love. And because of that, you're not noticing like the highs and the lows as much, and therefore it feels middle ground, and that's what makes it feel mediocre. Like it might make it feel like a big deal if you're seeing it 1,000 times, but I think that's why we worry about having collector curated algorithms open for too long. Do you know what I mean? If you see 1,000 seeds on your feed in a day, are you really stopping to think, God, that one was gorgeous? Or are you just thinking there's another seed? If the algorithms were up for 6 months, would you still be hunting for the ones that are of the best quality?
I think I sometimes take Jamie's side of this when it like comes to scale, right? Because in this current market, like, yeah, there's definitely a lot less entrants, and having a diversification of people that are collecting and interacting with collector curated is really interesting and adds to the dynamic. Having long-term collectors, having new collectors, having people that are speculating, I think all of that really adds to the experience, and when that experience is missing, then it becomes feeling a little bit more stale, right? Because it doesn't feel like like a symphony of everything hitting you at the same time. It feels like a small pool of people that are genuinely interested in something, but it's not like there's that fever, that's all around, and it feels like, oh yeah, like something really exciting and new is happening. So I can relate with that. I think a shorter collector curation time, especially in this kind of like environment currently, is a smart idea. It makes it feel like an actual event, like something that you have to show up to. It feels like going to a festival almost, like you show up to, you actually can interact. So,
and I think it's also
on that note, Holly's about to announce an extension by a week.
Wow, that's massive news.
Well, I think it's true. You need an opportunity to miss something as well. Like we all look back at, like generating autoscope seeds and sketchbook seeds, and we miss it so much. We miss that excitement. But if both of those algorithms were still open, would we still be going every single day? Almost definitely not. It doesn't mean we'd love the series less, but it would just, it would be less exciting. You wouldn't have that momentum. You wouldn't feel part of a community because everyone's attention would be split elsewhere. I also think, though, just going back to Grace's post for a second, it's quite hard when you're like a professional working in the industry to not occasionally have that kind of false positivity, because you're trying to, like, a win for anyone in the industry is kind of a win for you. So in theory, if we saw like a company or a platform that we work with and they put on like a horrendous exhibition, we'd still, congratulate them, be excited that they put it on. I mean, it doesn't happen frequently, luckily, but you couldn't, working in this space, you couldn't come out and be like, yikes, that would get cut.
I mean, putting artwork down can genuinely hurt artists' careers as well. So yeah, I mean, it's Ivan. You've always got strong thoughts and takes on.
I've broken that rule before. Though. Don't take me there.
Yeah. What's your current?
So hard.
Yeah.
I think all of these kind of discussions are best had like in person. If it really feels like conducive to anything. I think that in the scope of digital art and the presentation of it, I think is a lot smaller than the scope of actual amount of artists making digital art, and even at times seems smaller, like the people actually appreciating it and supporting it. So I think that trying to air out your thoughts on a presentation when it doesn't feel like at the most highest level of quality, it doesn't really do too much. Like we can always wish for higher presentation for digital art, right? We all want it to be at the same level as every single day you walk in and you can see digital art at the same level of presentation as Hauser and Wirth. Like that's the goal. Everyone wishes that, but the reality is there's a lot less money to achieve that type of presentation and exhibition to begin with. So having these expectations, I think, of perfection, while they come from a very honest and a place of good intention, it doesn't really get us anywhere to talk down on it. It's not like that gallery is suddenly going to make another $100,000 that's expendable to buy themselves a really crazy screen, you know, or to think of like a really crazy marketing structure, you know, where they bring a few other people on board, you know, and try to hit like publications and do all this collector reach out that's really in depth, you know, and that takes time and bandwidth. It's not like that money's coming in, right? So and being constructive about it, like I know that there's this natural urge for everyone to be like, "Oh, this is what I think could be better," you know. But the bottom line is like, if you don't have 30 grand to make the exhibition look like a 30 grand, you know, dollar exhibition, then we're just scrapping. You know, that's really what it is. We're scrapping to do the best we can. It's the same way as that, and this is all relational, right? But like a $20,000 exhibition is not a $1 million exhibition at a museum, right? Like what, like at times, if we're looking at these new galleries that have 1,000, 2,000 followers in Web3, you know, it's akin to when you make a hit in your bedroom, you know, not when you're writing an album at the Atlantic Records studio using like microphones that like people from like 1940 and onward use to get that like warm tone. You know, you don't have that $1 million microphone. So
I was having a similar conversation with Janice, Greek DX at Williams show last night.
Yeah.
And he was basically saying like one of the real issues that we have as a space is that like we're not really putting great context out. It's hard for art world people outside the space to get a sense of what these works are about. So many great things here, but such poor communication.
So does he mean by context? Was in this conversation, it's like what type of context?
I think he meant written. I think he meant written texts.
Yeah,
but
like more in depth.
Yeah,
referential things.
But it's exactly to what you were saying. It's about money, because when you're Mimi and you've got a space in New York, and you're trying to sell work for between 10 and 50 grand for a sellout show, I mean, that commission doesn't. It's just not going to cover the costs that a house from worth potential $2 million sale would, or $10 million sale.
No, it really wouldn't. And
yeah, so we need more collectors who are going to drive up the prices.
But will
and
the
allow
context
bigger commissions to sorry.
But as Giannis is saying, like, in your opinion, will the context in building that out, will it bring the new collectors? And if so, should we all be cumulatively focusing on that? Or is this one of those things that's like slowly through time, it adds up so much, there becomes so much wealth of knowledge, there becomes so much belief of direction, right? And understanding that the collectors see that and start thinking, well, this is someplace substantial because it has that wealth of knowledge. Like it feels weighty in itself because all that context is there. Like I assumedly would say it's probably the latter, right? It takes time to build that up. That's why Rhizome feels like Rhizome today, right? Because they've had like decades now of time to build up as a database. You can trust them. Like they built their own institution. They're probably the leading, institution for being able to like go back in the time machine and see, those type of pieces, learn about them.
Well, be able time and the hard work of people who really care, and shout out Rhizome, shout out Lorandom, Janice is working on this as well. Yeah, I mean, these people are all just kind of like giving to the space, and we're all set to benefit from it. So pretty cool.
All right,
what else we got?
What's next on
Botto P5?
So Botto's just announced their 11th period, and it's just gone live. So this one, they're going.
I'm sorry, could you outline what that means?
Sure. So they Botto, every time it creates within a new period that has like a title and a theme and kind of guides Botto's output and its creation, I think. And each time it creates in rounds, and people will vote on the works that eventually get selected to go for auction. For this new period, the 11th one, it's called Liminal Thresholds. And the last couple of periods have been more kind of figurative. This one's becoming a lot more abstract because they're feeding in seeds from the P5JS study that Botto did, where it's obviously writing these algorithms. We got to the final 22 algorithms. All 22 of those are now being fed as images back into Botto's taste model and influencing what it's outputting. And we weren't sure originally, like when we were doing algorithmic evolution, we kept asking them, will it be obvious? Will collectors know if their algorithm has then fed into work that goes to auction, etc.? We now know that you can trace that. So they've published these like initial outputs from the new period, and you can tell exactly which algorithm has been fed into the taste model to create that work.
Can you ever see more than one
cool.
Can you ever see more than one in one output?
No, so I think at the moment it's just one algorithm to one output. And then so it's not, for some of them you can see immediately, like especially for example like Viramolna, that algorithm that Botto did, you can visually spot that quite quickly in the new outputs. But a lot of them, the giraffe one as well, but a lot of them it's much more subtle, and there are kind of elements in there that you wonder where on earth they came from. And then of course that's Botto doing its thing and having a play. And I don't know to what extent, because people obviously vote on the work, so I don't know to what extent the ones that end up going for auction will be more kind of Botto's voice or more obviously influenced by P5. But that's kind of in the Botto DAO's mindset, that's the exciting part about this period, is that they're now again pushing into that boundary of like, who's the curator, how does the collaboration work? Like it's the machine is being fed images that aren't fully from the machine, aren't fully from humans. Like there's already that kind of interplay. So I think it'll be really cool. I was
quick turnaround. I was
very
expecting
quick
this to
turnaround, but I mean they've been building it for forever. They've been working towards it for so long, and they knew the whole time that they were gearing up to the P5 study that they would feed it back into its taste model. But yeah, they're really cool, and I'm really curious to see whether people try and like embrace it or eradicate it. I think it will kind of say something about who amongst Botto's supporters got involved with P5. It kind of felt like everyone, but there will be some people who are much more pro at exploring a new medium, and some people who probably kind of feel like they have to defend the Botto's core practice, and now the two are mingling.
I mean, they're good looking.
Yeah.
That's a really interesting point. Like, who on the side of the spectrum of, okay, Botto has an inherent aesthetic that you got to protect, versus the people that are like, Botto is an artist learning to be an artist, and learning to express. Like, which side will win out between the community, I think is an interesting part of the whole dynamic in general of having it be community governed.
And also in terms of having new outputs from Botto that are influenced by the giraffe, like so many people got behind the giraffe and loved it, but at the same time more people kind of thought that was too much influence from us, the community. That was like an errant like outstanding, or you know what I mean. And so now will they vote it so that that's a work that goes to auction and becomes part of Botto's core AI canon, or will they kind of try and tuck it away in its box?
The giraffe's quite a bit more elegant than the original. The giraffe, the new one.
Yeah.
Giraffe inspired one.
I actually really love that. It's cool.
Yeah, it's really cool. Cool. I put Artist Rims on here because I was wondering if it could be interesting for us to just like have some of our debates on the pod. Like trying to figure out.
Yeah, well, let's talk about it in general. I mean, we had initially started Artist Rooms in early January around, with the intent of having it be kind of in seasons, right? So like a couple artists to release in seasons, and we would market it but lightly, and it was a format for Verse to allow artists to release what they want, to experiment, to release it in different formats, and to go about it in a way that was really free in terms of agency, right? And because Verse has lots of different ways of releasing, whether it be editions, one of ones, collector curated releases, like all these different types of formats, there was a lot of freedom in that kind of offering, from Verse as a platform. We quickly realized that this kind of format in general, isn't as high impact because of Verse's history. We've put a lot of time and effort into every single release in terms of exhibition pages and curations, and really taking the time with each series to have a relationship with each artist and build something out that will like connect on a further scale, right, than releasing a series
Put
like
together
by
some of the
yourself.
context that we were talking about earlier.
Exactly. Bringing back all the exhibition pages, trying to get deep into the interviews. The way I personally like doing interviews and exhibition pages is, getting a pretty lengthy, dive into an artist's history, kind of previous series and what leads to the advent of the new work, right, and its purpose and intent, and then breaking down that journal into an exhibition page. So it's basically like you're hearing from the artists themselves in a longer form type of reading, about the piece and everything that builds up to it, not just the aspect of a new series, right? You get a little bit of both. And I think that has been a great way for collectors to learn about the history of the artist and also learn about why that series is impactful, so bringing that back into artist rooms, as becoming the curatorial director of it, we want to have a series based focus, where it's larger series, where we all spend a lot more time on building the direction of it, right, bringing the structure of it, bringing the context of it, the design of it, really to Web3 and to a bigger body of collectors, being able to go back to the collector bases, right, and do reach outs, be able to inform them and keep them in the loop of what like artists that they have, already supported we're up to, looping in the Verse top collectors and being able to do some pretty interesting things with pre-sales here. So I think that, with this kind of format, it's a really interesting place to present on Verse because aside from the limited solos that are, either once per month or once every 2 months, and it's a very specific, kind of focus, right? It's like working half a year, sometimes a year for that one show, that is really large scale, like a lot of attention has to go to something like that, in the grand scheme of things. Solos, let's be completely honest, like I've worked on solos before. Jamie, you oversee like pretty much all the solos, in terms of like knowing what's going on. It takes like 6 months. Sometimes it takes even a year of being able to build up that structure. So for Verse to have a lane where it's still highly curated, right? It's
Well,
still
can
not.
can a model exist where we don't do any promo at all, or can, like, because the issue with us doing no promo at all is that things don't sell as well. We want everything to feel special, everything to feel like a big deal.
Yeah.
So we can't really afford to just like let things go out and not take a big
Yeah.
commission. And we can't afford to do a load of work and not take a big commission. So
Yeah.
are we concluding that the only way forwards here is series, lots of promotion, really go for it, and that's it? Or thread in some other things? How are you thinking about it?
I think there's two interesting formats for this in general. I think that since Artist Rooms is still curated, right? Each series is still reviewed by the team, and eventually it's approved to be presented, right? Because of that, I think if an artist feels confident in their promotional abilities, that to do something, like a smaller series, that is led by them in terms of getting the word out there. I think it's perfectly. I think
Sorry,
it's a
if an
perfect.
artist is confident in their promotional abilities, or if you're confident in an artist's promotional abilities.
Well, I think it's sometimes both, obviously, because in the end of the day, I think for something like Artist Rooms, and I think for any model on any platform, is that you want each series to be a success, right? You want it all to find its collectors. You want people to be able to, find something in it that pulls and grabs them and makes them talk about it, to try to find that connectivity. And I think that for a place to feel really exciting, to be able to take the time to do that, makes all the difference, right? To be able to have an actual structured plan around it makes all the difference, and I really do feel like artist rooms, it would be an amazing place for like series-based work to thrive with that kind of focus, right? Each step by step, building out a really beautiful image of what artist rooms is to begin with. So for that reason, I think primarily I am of the opinion to lean into series-based work, larger series that are 200, 400 pieces, right? Being able to do all the work on the back end of reaching out to collectors, getting them informed, getting actual designs, which is something that the Ivan Juskevich Gallery did not do. And like a lot of type of releases that were more just verse and not solos had done, so incorporating designs now, incorporating that context and long kind of marketing, I think is going to be really impactful. And I think is going to be a strong way forward because it makes it momentous. I think it's hard for collectors to really stay in the loop of things if it's intermittent releasing of a few pieces.
So how to think about the age-old problem of the fact that when you're only showing things that are big and flashy and commercial and going to do well, when you're only showing those kinds of works, it starts to get boring quickly. And we obviously want to be putting out interesting things as well as things that are exciting to collect.
I think it's a bit of a balance in terms of gallery program. Like I think we've done so well with Verse in the sense that, with Solo, in the sense that we have had some releases that have yielded much lower profits but been really strong for the brand. Like Shlome's, for example, we made absolutely nothing, but it was such a important part of our program and like kind of setting the tone and being experimental. So I imagine it's just about striking a balance, like having enough in there that it feels like a substantial program, but not so much that it takes all of our bandwidth away from other releases that might be beneficial financially. But also at the end of the day, we've kind of said that artist rooms is a place for artists to release whatever they want, whenever they want. So I think we have every right to kind of make suggestions to artists along the lines of, this would be really beneficial marketing move, or it would be great if you could release a bigger series and then we can put more weight behind you. But at the same time, if, Yewan Song comes back and wants to release just one more piece with us, I don't think we should ever say no to that because she's an artist room's artist and it will be most likely a brilliant piece that will enhance the program.
Yeah, it's definitely a balance of like figuring out how to give space to those type of singular works. I think in theory it would be amazing for Verse to have a way where you could self-upload and be able to present with that kind of high-level presentation that Verse has, but I think that, yeah, it's always just about finding how to put the most effort into what will make the most impact, right? Get art to more people in general as a whole then. Oh, I have a call right now. Oh God, I have to go.
Okay, well
All right, I'll catch you.
Go into
Bye.
see.
Did you do your artist highlight?
No. Ivan, have you got a sec?
No, I have a meeting right now.
We've had it suggested that we could and should go into a lot more detail when we're doing our artist highlights. Shout out John Wabushi if you're listening. Thank you, John, for the feedback. John suggested it would be interesting if we did, just gave a bit, like, spoke about art more, because we probably don't do the best job of actually talking about art much. But we do artist highlights, so maybe we could do a bit more, just go into it a bit more, and talk about the works a bit more. And I said to him, I'm really bad at talking about art. I buy what I just respond to, and I can't usually articulate why I like things. And Link is definitely one of them. This is a piece by Andreas Giessen and City Vanesi that I think, correct me if I'm wrong, Holly, Mimi showed at Photo Paris. Is that right?
Yeah, she did.
And I think she had three screens next to each other. And I have tried to figure out how these are made. I saw it looked like some kind of dark room, and Andreas was go ahead, Holly.
Have you ever taken photos with long exposure?
Yes.
Have you ever taken long exposure photos?
Traffic at night kind
it's
of
like
thing.
that. Yeah, exactly. So it's like that, I believe. So the lights are plotted. So the plotter's moving the lights and the camera's taking long exposure photos.
Oh, that's cool.
And then all of those photos are stitched together to create the animated moving work.
Oh.
But it was a real kind of installation in a real room. So the background, it's not AI'd or anything like that. Not that that's an issue. But so it's plotted like in a real room, so you get those beautiful reflections.
But it's also not just a video, because you can actually click on it and change the direction, move it around a bit, so something else is going on there.
So maybe they then manipulated that, because there is footage of what Holly is speaking about. I've seen them documenting that process of filming that. I've seen that, but I couldn't quite understand then how that relates to them, because I do know that is part of the work, but I can't figure out how that works. So you can interact with them.
Maybe they had cameras like all the way around the work, so that they caught it from every angle and then stitched the images together as like a 3D kind of rendering rather than a film of the lights.
Well, I'm just sharing my screen now, but can you see you can kind of like stop it and pull it and pull it. I only found out you could do that after getting it.
I didn't know that you could do that.
But anyway, this to say, it kind of made me I don't know how to like articulate this in a way that doesn't sound offensive, but I don't care how it's made. I feel like the sign of some good works are it just like it's strong and it just kind of hits you and does something without you having to need to know how it's made or what's actually going on. And I feel like and that definitely doesn't hold for everything. Like process is part of the piece, and sometimes the process is part of the piece and part of the concept, but in this instance I feel like this is just it just hit me, and I feel it's a really strong piece, and I didn't need to know how it's made to be impressed.
But you also know quite a lot about Andreas.
That is true.
And CD, and you have that in the back of your mind, so you look at the work very differently.
That's true.
Than if it was made by.
Anyway, I can't really put into words why I like it, but and as you say, like the fact that I think that Andreas and CD are generally great definitely has something to do with this. I love how understated they are as people. There's something just so like European elegant about them and everything that they put out, and I feel like this is
pristine.
And this is like a flashy. This is by their standards. This is flashy, and I don't know. It's just I generally like shiny. A bit of a magpie. I like shiny stuff. Andreas and Cities is cool and understated meets shiny. I felt that was, I don't know, just hit something.
Yeah, it's something there's something about the two of them where you really enjoy how seriously they take their craft. It's just going to be pristine, whether they're making generative work, whether they're manipulating.
I like how much they strip out. Like it's like they're trying to get rid of everything. Like including color, including like the. I'm not thinking of a particular fashion designer, but like the fashion designer who just like wears simple black. I feel like that's them. Like so stripped back, so understated and cool. And everything about their work kind of speaks to that.
It's about the quality only. There's no compromise there.
No bullshit. It's just
I mean, when they installed the show in London with us, they were just so particular and meticulous about everything. It was all very last minute, but because everything had to be pristine and perfect.
But that doesn't
There was no
necessarily mean
compromising.
like, it doesn't mean necessarily the most expensive $1 billion kind of like stainless steel
No.
frame. It can be like cobbled together, but just done in a certain high precision.
Absolutely, because the former would be tacky. That's not
Yeah.
their style.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Do you have one, Leyla?
You know, I don't, because my mind is so deep in William. Everything is William Mapan right now. And I can only think about, I mean, when I'm so deep in a exhibition and I've just set it up and I can go scroll through my feed to remind myself how many, other artists have come to my mind. But the thing is, I haven't been reading much on my Twitter. And of course, there are many artists that I admire and I want to highlight. But genuinely, my mind is in William and and also just being more and more in awe with his work. He's one of those artists that the more time you spend with him and the more time you spend with the work, the more you like it. Sometimes it has the opposite effect. But with William, it's like really quiet and you just, it just builds up your admiration for the work. And I think that's why it's a good reason. It's a good thing we gave people a bit more time with a code as well, because you need that time with the work to really understand it. The same thing happened with Sketch
We've
Brigade.
definitely got to get like William out there as much as possible, because like the more you know William, the more his work makes sense.
And he's so eloquent.
He's so cool.
He's eloquent and he's very genuine, and he says, things that come from an authentic place, but are very much about, sort of quite formal qualities of being an artist. And he's very good at articulating it without sounding pretentious. And I think that's kind of an art. So sounds chilly, but that's that's on my mind. So well, there you go. Selling it. Bye, bye,
Zero
bye.
points, Leyla.
Bye now. I don't think anybody needs to shill that man's work. Honestly, that's
How about you, Holly?
Well, I can talk about the most recent piece that I bought.
That sounds good.
Because I also like Leyla, I've been a little bit off Twitter, other than jamming other people's feeds this week. But the most recent piece that I bought was one of Cerise's from Spectrumnesia. It's called Otherworldly Trespassing. And it's one of the landscapes where there's this like really striking shot in the middle of the road and the kind of John Baldessari sun in the background.
That is a Baldessari sun. I love that.
Yeah, I love it.
It's got a bit of a rip above it in a weird way.
Yeah, it kind of tears like a tiny little lightning bolt. I just love the entire series so much. I particularly wanted that work, but I think I would have been happy with any of them had it been randomized. And I also really wanted to get the second shark.
Do you know or care what's going on with the guy in the middle of the road with the shark?
How he makes
no,
them?
I mean like the composition.
With the story? No, not really, because they're quite, I think all the works in the series are quite surrealistic. Like I don't think that he has kind of a story in mind when he's building each composition. And I actually really love that. I initially was drawn to the series because it immediately reminded me of one of my favorite authors, who also, like, he's a fiction writer, but every story that he writes is very surreal as well. And it's just like 90% of his writing is like metaphors and similes, which if that's not your style, it can drive you insane. But he's just like, you can tell his whole brain is just kind of bubbling over with kind of just imagination and curiosity and coming up with bizarre combinations. And I love that. Like the man standing in the middle of the road with absolutely no context, the shark. I just think it's brilliant. I love that the shark's shadow doesn't match perfectly.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah. I just think it's brilliant. I love this piece.
Love that.
And maybe I have a thing for sharks, considering the bit on Elna's piece. I didn't think about that.
Do you know what's going on with the kind of
so-
shimmer? It looks like it's kind of like 7 or 8 frames, just kind of chopping quickly.
It almost looks like an old television
Yeah.
glitch. No, I don't know how he does that. Maybe it's a bit like Petra, like layering the image. But I'm not sure. I should know
really, really
because I
love this
reached out to
series.
Cereza and asked for more information.
Love that.
But I don't. Yeah. So they'd be my artist highlight this week.
Nice.
And it's a continuous series, isn't it, Holly? So there should be
Yeah.
more
Gosh, she's
coming out
shilling
of that
again,
series. It's quite
honestly.
large.
Shout out Artist Room Cereza coming soon.
Oh God, I'm
Find me
sorry.
works.
No, but I think it's like a collection of 100, isn't it?
Oh really?
So-
I didn't even know
think
that.
so. Yeah, I think it's quite a large series, and it's just being released over a longer time.
Can I also shout out, I think I've said this before, but Casey Reyes's 923 Open Rooms. I'm probably like really, really, really late to the party here. But have you guys noticed that it's only 3 colours? I'm going to share my screen again.
Is it RGB?
Yeah, it's only 3 colours. Hang on. So this, you zoom in, everything red, green, blue. So this kind of like greeny purple, red,
No,
green, blue,
I didn't know
red,
that.
green, blue.
That's
Isn't that
beautiful.
amazing?
That's gorgeous. Did you just buy it?
I got this the other day. This
They're not. I mean, they're not crazy prices. The listings.
they're not at all.
You can get it on
They
First
are
Secondary
they-
without a wallet.
They're $300. Cool, Leyla. So yeah, anything else to shill?
Yes. I've got lots of things to sell for you. So what's coming up at Verse? Next week, we've got a fake whale release with Andy Duboc that was delayed by a week. That was completely on us, on Verse. We had to move some things around. So that's going to be happening this week. We also have a release by Petra Courtright coming up. We've been waiting for this for quite a while. And finally, she sent us some new work and it's beautiful and we can't wait to share it with you. And we'll also have some more artist rooms coming up to be confirmed, probably closer early in the week. Yeah, loads of exciting things. And William is the week after.
Can we not still show that in the pod?
Yes,
we
can.
need to say the date's changed.
On a bigger news is that we have a new date. We have a new release date for William Mapan. It's going to be the 22nd of April. William, for those who don't know, was fine-tuning Sketchbook B code for a while, and it took a little longer than expected. And we thought it might make sense to delay the release date to give collectors more time to spend with the code, because that was a major difference with Sketchbook A, and we wanted to give people the same experience here. So Etude and Sketchbook B will be continue to be live the whole of next week. You can save the seeds, you can share them, and the sale is going to be on the 22nd. All those details are pinned to our Twitter feed, I believe. I think that's it from my end. I can't think of anything else. You guys have anything to add?
I think that's it.
Cool. Ça marche. All right.
Well, Holly, hope you had a fun first pod. Hope you enjoyed it. Hope it was everything
I did.
you expected and wanted.
Holly, thank you for joining. You're the best.
Thanks for having
Do this
me.
on a regular
Good
basis.
to see you guys.
All right.
See you in a bit.
Take care. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.